Hello, welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. Patch 6 dropped yesterday. In this video I'm going to be going through some of the basics of the Sorcerer class and what sort of options we get and what you should be thinking about when you're choosing between the different options that you're given. So as a Sorcerer, there are two subclasses which are chosen at level 1, a bit like Clerics. We have Wild Magic and Draconic Bloodline. So let's start with Wild Magic. So your powers come from ancient forces of chaos. They churn within you, waiting to burst free at any time. So there's not much to see here about the Wild Magic subclass, nothing to choose apart from these two subclass features. So once per short rest or long rest, you can use the Tides of Chaos, which can give you advantage on an attack roll, ability check or saving throw, and there's no limit to when you can use this. Your sorcerer can just use this whenever they want, but as a consequence, there's a chance of triggering a Wild Magic. Increases for the next spell of first level or higher. Now, it's not really explained here what that really means. We've got Wild Magic here, right? And Wild Magic stems from the forces of chaos. It churns within sorcerers which wield it, waiting to burst free. So there is a chance, I don't think we know quite yet exactly what the percentage chance is, but there is a chance when you cast a spell of first level or higher that there is what the player's handbook from Dungeons and Dragons would call a Wild Magic surge. And random effects can happen. I don't know if anyone has made a list of all of them yet, but ones I've experienced so far or saw on the stream yesterday was that a fog cloud can be made, a mephit can spawn, that happened to me. All weapons of creatures within 20 feet were enchanted and automatic critical hits. All creatures within 30 feet have blur cast on them, which gives disadvantage on attack rolls against them. Some of these effects are positive, some are negative. So it makes for a unpredictable class. So we've got the unpredictability of the Wild Magic, but as a consequence, you've got the Tides of Chaos, which lets you choose when you have advantage on some sort of roll. The Draconic Bloodline is a bit different. Your veins carry Draconic magic, the result of a powerful dragon ancestor, and we get to make a choice of which type of dragon that you have in your blood. The dragons in Dungeons and Dragons are split basically into two groups, the so-called chromatic group, which are named after colours, so red, black, blue, white and green, and the metallic group, gold, silver, bronze, copper, brass. On the whole, the chromatic dragons are evil and the metallic dragons are good, but that doesn't affect our character creation in Baldur's Gate 3 apart from what types of scales we get. So as you go down, you get different colour scales and you can customise these, right? You could even pick other dragon colours if you really wanted to. In terms of what this does to your character apart from aesthetics, is each bloodline gets a different spell given to them at level 1, which the sorcerer knows at all times. So fire is Burning Hands, acid is Grease, lightning is Witch Bolt, cold is Armour of Agathis, poison is Ray of Sickness, gold is Disguise Self, silver Featherfall, bronze Fog Cloud, copper Tasha's Hideous Laughter, brass is Sleep. Most of these are quite good spells to have. I might stay away from Witch Bolt personally because the concentration for 1d12 damage, I know it's automatic but you have to hit in the first place. I'd rather just keep trying to cast Firebolt. That's my own personal view. You also will get resistance to the type of damage that's in the brackets here. So if you take the red Draconic Ancestry, it says fire. So at 6th level, which we can't get to yet, spells that deal fire damage are more powerful and you can become resistant to fire damage. For acid, you become resistant to acid damage and so on, which is what these damage types and brackets are for. Apart from just having an extra spell and eventually doing more fire damage and being resistant to a particular type of damage, Draconic Bloodline Sorcerers also get an extra 1 hit point per sorcerer level. That doesn't sound like a lot, but normally sorcerers would get 4 hit points per level plus the Constitution modifier. This now goes up to 5. That is actually quite a bit of an increase and will add up over time. And also your armor class starts off at 13. So when you aren't wearing armor, your base armor class increases by 3. So that's the equivalent really of having mage armor. So you save yourself a spell slot and a spell no. Now coming to spells, sorcerers know 4 cantrips at level 1, and these are the same as the wizard cantrips. There's not a single different choice. So pick what you want from these. I would point out that Friends now, once the spell ends, the creature knows it was charmed and might accuse the spellcaster. So Friends isn't now the be-all and end-all of dialogue casting. I'm not saying you shouldn't take it, just be aware of it. So pick 4 spells that you would like. I would definitely suggest picking some sort of utility spell. We've got more than enough cantrips to choose from that we don't really need to have all of them being damaging. I might pick Firebolt. I mean, this is completely up to you. Most of these aren't bad. I'd probably avoid Blade Ward, True Strike, and probably avoid Poison Spray. The others have some sort of use. You might be able to create a theme with if you've got a Draconic Bloodline especially. So pick 4 cantrips. And then spells, in terms of spells, sorcerers are very different to wizards. Sorcerers are much more like warlocks and rangers, where they learn a particular spell that you choose, but they learn a spell every level, or 2 at level 1, and they always have those spells prepared, ready to cast. So you do need to be careful, because at level 1 you only get to pick 2 different spells, and each level you only get to pick 1 extra spell. So you have to be very careful with your spells known. And I think even by level 20 you don't know more than about 15 or 16. It's not actually always 1 per level. You can replace spells every level, 1 spell that you know with another one. So if you pick a bad spell, you can change it at the next level up. So you do have some chance of customization, but still you have a limited number of spells known. Now the Draconic Sorcerer bloodline, or the Draconic ancestry, tries to fix that a little bit by giving you an extra spell. I personally would pick Chromatic Orb right now because it's a new spell and it's the, want to use a new spell. So pick Chromatic Orb. And this art here is very similar to what it was in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Anyway, if you've got a Draconic Ancestry Sorcerer, do not pick Mage Armor. There's no need. I'd pick something else. And there aren't really too many bad spells here. I probably wouldn't pick Charm Person. I personally wouldn't normally pick Witch Bolt, but it is good for making surfaces electrified. Otherwise, all the spells are generally quite good. I'd probably not pick Disguise Self. I'm not going to go over all the spells. I've gone over these spells for wizards in previous videos and haven't really changed since then. No other choices for the sorcerer at this point. We need to talk about race. Here we are. So sorcerers, their main casting stat is charisma. Or not the main, their casting stat is charisma. So you want to have charisma as high as possible if you want your spells to work better. Also, charisma is quite good in quite a lot of dialogue options as well. The different races that improve charisma. We've got the Tiefling, all 3 types, give charisma +2. Drow, charisma +1, human, charisma +1. Half-elves have charisma +2, plus 2 other options, very strong for sorcerers. If you do pick half-elf, I'd highly suggest you pick dexterity and constitution. A high half-elf gets you an extra cantrip, so you have 5 to begin with. Do bear in mind that these will use intelligence as the casting modifier, so if you do pick a high half-elf, or even high elf, make sure you pick one of the cantrips that isn't an attack roll or force a saving throw. So Blade Ward, Dancing Lights, Friends, Light, Mage Hand, Minor Illusion, and True Strike if you really wish. Wood half-elf gets you an extra 5 feet of movement and proficiency in stealth, both of which are useful. And last race is the Lightfoot Halfling with charisma +1. They get lucky and brave, whichever one is your preferred flavour. As for skills, there's not actually a huge choice of skills here. You will also have to take into account your background. Pick what you think is best. I don't really think there are any particularly good or bad skills. Only 2 skills to keep in mind for combat, if that's what you're worried about, are athletics and acrobatics, because they help you resist being shoved, or at least that's what it said before. Yeah, helps you resist being shoved. But otherwise, just pick what you might think is flavorful for your character, or perhaps there are certain roles that come up where you want to have proficiency in them. As for ability points, so this is a drow. This is a not bad situation to have. Generally, you don't want to have odd stat points unless you know you're going to increase them by some way or other. For dexterity, there are several feats that can help you increase dexterity, so it's not necessarily bad to leave that at 15. For another race, let's say a tiefling, charisma at 17 is plausible because there are methods to increase charisma by 1 outside of ability score improvements, so perhaps you could have charisma at 17, but I would definitely suggest, no matter what you do, you get dexterity and constitution to +2. Dexterity helps with saving throws, initiative, armor class, very importantly, and any ranged attacks you might be doing. And constitution helps with, your health and also help you maintain concentration. Intelligence, wisdom, and strength don't come into it so much. I like not having a low strength because then you can carry more, and that's just a kind of quality of life thing. Intelligence and wisdom, not so well. Wisdom is important for resisting spells, so I'd probably, if I was going to put any stat a -1 modifier, I'd personally put intelligence. Alright, so that just about covers character creation. One of the longest parts of the video, probably. There's quite a bit to talk about there. I've actually gone and already made 4 sorcerers, and I'm going to show you what I've done with them at each level up. If you manage to kill Commander Zulk and all of his allies, you do get to level 2 on the Nautiloid, which is the same as before. So I've got 4 sorcerers here. So this is a drow I made. Dexterity is 15, charisma is 16. Maybe at level 4 I can take a feat that increases dexterity up to 16 perhaps, or make charisma up to 18. At level 2, we get a class passive, which is Metamagic. This is one thing that differentiates sorcerers from wizards, is that they can actually manipulate their spells in different ways. Most of them have a use. I would say some are probably, you're going to get more use out of some than others. So careful spell, allies automatically succeed saving throws against spells that require them. This isn't quite the same as the evocation school from wizards, because something like Burning Hands or Thunderwave, even if you pass your saving throw, you will still take some damage. So you could take this if you think you're going to have some AoE spells, area effect spells that could be affecting your allies. I mean, linking this with Fairy Fire could work, because then you can cast Fairy Fire over any area and only target enemies. Distance spell increases range of spells by 50%. Spells with a range of 5 feet are increased to 30 feet. That's quite powerful, I think. That means there aren't very many spells that have a range of 5 feet, but one of the ones that you could use you could get a good effect from is Shocking Grasp, because if that hits, then the enemy doesn't get any reactions, so then they don't get opportunity attacks. For other spells, if you've got a big open area where you're having a fight, this can help you target enemies from a long way away. Sometimes you might be up high as well, and your spells don't reach enemies that are far away and low down. This would help with that. Extended spell, double the duration of conditions, summons, and surfaces caused by spells. Doubling the duration of some conditions would be very important, like sleep. I think with spells, I wouldn't worry so much about the summons and surfaces, but the conditions here is very useful. The other two, I wouldn't put so much stock in, but none of these are bad choices really. Twin spell, this is one of the most popular ones in Dungeons and Dragons, that's for sure. Spells that only target one creature can target an additional creature. So for a single spell slot and as one sorcery point, you can pick a spell and target two different creatures. You can't have one spell target the same creature twice. That's not how this works. It's supposed to be for 2 different creatures. At level 2, you get to pick 1 extra spell. So these are the spells I haven't picked yet for this Sorcerer. I've obviously picked Mage Armor, and I can't quite tell what the other one is right now. But I'm going to pick Chromatic Orb because it's the new spell. Here we are. Replacement spell, so I picked Ray of Sickness. Maybe I don't want Ray of Sickness anymore, I'm bored of it, and perhaps I want Magic Missile. I do want to point out right now with Twin spell, I've tested this out earlier. When you twin cast Witch Bolt, 2 initial Witch Bolts go out, hit 2 different targets, but then you don't maintain concentration on either target. We also have up here, we can create sorcery points by spending a spell slot, or create a spell slot from sorcery points. Unfortunately, we only get the equivalent of 1 sorcery point per level, and they only replenish on the long rest. So at the moment, I've got 2 sorcery points and 3 level 1 spell slots. Let's use up one of these spell slots. So I'll cast Mage Armor. So that goes down by 1. So now I can maybe create a spell slot. So spend 2 sorcery points to unlock a level 1 spell slot. So I've only got 2 sorcery points. So if I choose this, and then lose both of the sorcery points, and then it increases the number of spell slots by 1. That won't stay permanently, that will go back down to 3 after a long rest. I would usually advise that you keep your sorcery points for casting spells rather than replenishing spell slots, because we can long rest easily enough in the game. I'm actually going to go over level 3 first before showing you the Metamagics, because at level 3 we get more choices of Metamagic. So we had Careful spell before, we had Distance spell before, Extended. So Heightened spell we didn't have before. So targets of spells that require saving throws have disadvantage on their first saving throw. This is powerful, but one of the big complaints in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition about sorcerers, apart from the number of spells known, is that the number of sorcery points they get is really quite low. And especially in early access, when our maximum level is 4, we'll have 4 sorcery points maximum. If we pick Heightened spell, at level 3, that's all of your sorcery points used up for that long rest. And if you're level 4, you'll have 1 sorcery point left over. So you have to be very careful when you kind of pick which Metamagics to have, and also when you use each of them. Heightened spell is powerful. Giving disadvantage on saving throws, that's very difficult to make happen, especially for things like wisdom saving throws. There are a few effects that give disadvantage on strength or dexterity saving throws, maybe even constitution saving throws from some of the summons for druids or rangers, but this is powerful because it doesn't matter what type of saving throw it is, they have disadvantage. Quicken spell, spells that take an action take a bonus action instead. This costs 3 sorcery points per spell level. No, per spell, sorry, not per spell level. And this is powerful also, but also takes up 3 sorcery points. Now in Baldur's Gate 3, we can cast this spell as a bonus action and as an action. Those of you who play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition will know that this Metamagic is actually cheaper, but there is the restriction that if you cast the spell as a bonus action, you're going to cast cantrips on your turn after that. So maybe they've increased the cost here because they know that they haven't got the same restriction. Subtle spell, you can cast spells while silenced. This is probably the least useful out of all of the Metamagics, because the only time we get silenced, as far as I'm aware, though I might be wrong in saying this, is with the silence spell. And for the most part, you can just walk out of that area. I don't think I'm going to be picking Subtle spell on any of my sorcerers. Maybe in the future, silence comes up more often. More casters will cast it, who knows, there'll be traps. But for now, I would probably leave it alone. So I'm going to pick Quicken spell for this druid. Also at level 3, you get to pick a new spell. Now we've got 3 new spells at level 2. We've got Cloud of Daggers, Crown of Madness, and Enlarge/Reduce, I'm going to pick Cloud of Daggers. I'm going to, on my Sorcerers, pick these new spells so I can show them off to you. But next up, I'll show off what the Metamagics can do in combat. Alright, so I'm hoping I can show off some Metamagic here and one of the new spells. To use a Metamagic, first of all, click on the symbol for it. And you'll see it highlights different spells. Those are the spells that are compatible with that particular Metamagic. Also want to point out right now, if you accidentally drag your Metamagics off, which has happened to me already. Right, obviously I did it there on purpose. If that happens, press N, go to the character sheet, scroll down the right hand side, and you've got the Metamagic features. Click on the symbol, and you can drag them back into this little box here. So don't worry if you accidentally drag them out, which happens sometimes with spells also. So I'm going to try and show off Crown of Madness and Heightened Spell. So this uses 3 sorcery points per spell. And he's only got 3 sorcery points, it's level 3. So I'm going to cast Crown of Madness on Warren. Now, I don't think it updates the stats, because if I take it off, Crown of Madness is 60% normally. Then if I click on Heightened Spell and then Crown of Madness, it still says 60%. So it gives 1 disadvantage on its first saving throw against the spell. And it did have disadvantage there. Saving throw is 3, 1d20 disadvantage. So the heightened spell there did work. And Crown of Madness, just to show you, instilled with magical madness, will attack the nearest creature. So poor old Warren here is probably going to attack my sorcerer first. So I need to get him out of the way if I can. But he's surprised, so it looks like it will be possible. Ooh. Concentration broken. Why was that? Ah, Warren made a saving throw against Crown of Madness. This is one of the downsides of a few spells in the game, is that at the end of his turn he took a saving throw and he passed it. And there's nothing I can do to actually make that saving throw worse, because Heightened Spell, it very specifically says that it's just the first saving throw. So any subsequent saving throws they have the normal roll for. Alright, time to show off another Metamagic. What have I got? Extended Spell. Doubles the duration of conditions. So I can see here, when I highlight this, it shows several different spells that are compatible with it. So this is also known as Fairy Fire because they are a drow. I wouldn't use it for that. I don't have any particularly good spells to use this with. Maybe we can use Chill Touch. If it hits, the duration will be 2 turns instead of 1. So we can't see how long the surfaces are going to last, but if I do cast Chromatic Orb, oh, that was a Wild Magic Surge. I was hoping that was going to happen. Alright, so Wild Magic Surge, until the end of your next turn, you can use... Where's it gone? Here it is. I can use a bonus action to teleport up to 30 feet. Brilliant. That's just this single Sorcerer. Obviously, I can't hide, but I've now got a bonus action for a few turns where I can teleport. So this is definitely one of the beneficial Wild Magic Surges. We can see that the surface here lasts 10 turns. I don't think it would normally last 10 turns. Twin Spell, alright. I always feel this is a bit cheating when the Chromatic Orbs actually give an area of effect. So with Twin Spell, probably one of the most powerful ones, especially since it only costs 1 sorcery point. You can pick one of these, and since I've got level 2 spell slots, since we're level 3, I can, if I want to, send out, for example, level 2 Acid Chromatic Orb. And with Twin Spell, I can target 2 different creatures. If I try and hit the same creature, it says already targeted and it doesn't work. So I have to pick 2 different creatures, doing a fair amount of damage because it was level 2. It's roll 3d8, and I only used 1 spell slot, so that's pretty cool. Twin Spell is probably going to be one of my favourite ones, as well as Quickened Spell. So what else have I got left to show? Distant Spell. Oh yeah, Shock and Grasp. So Shock and Grasp normally has a 5-foot range. You can see in the description here, it says range is now 30 feet. So I can hit Tammin with Shock and Grasp from all that distance away. That wasn't actually a good use of the Metamagic. I just wanted to show it, because I could have just used Firebolt and probably killed him as well. Now I just want to show off Careful Spell. This is obviously not how you would use this in combat, but I mentioned Fairy Fire earlier. So allies automatically succeed their saving throws. So normally Fairy Fire would target them, but they've all passed their saving throw. In fact, it looks like they didn't even have to make a saving throw, because there are no rolls here. Right? They all passed automatically. And we've still got our Wild Magic Teleport going. Now I'm going to have to wait until a different fight to be able to show you Quicken Spell, because I think the sorcerers that have it don't have enough sorcery points currently. Here comes Gimblebuck. One last thing I can show you is the Tides of Chaos. Activate to get an advantage on your next attack roll, ability check or saving throw, but will increase the chance of a wild magic surge. So let's use it, I don't know, let's use it with level 1. You just have to click it and you automatically have advantage. There are advantage on attack because of Tides of Chaos. One thing I would point out, also, I didn't mention it earlier, is that sorcerers are actually proficient with light crossbows. And on the Nautiloid, in the final room of the Nautiloid, there are loads of imps on the floor, and loads of them have got light crossbows. And I managed to pick up a light crossbow for every single one of my sorcerers. And at the low levels, the light crossbow, if you've got a +2 or especially +3 in dexterity, is really, really useful because it'll do more damage than most of your attacks. Because 1d8 +2 or 1d8 +3 is essentially better than 1d10 or 1d8. So do keep that in mind. I also want to show off enlarge/reduce, which they did show off in the live stream. So you can either make a creature smaller, which means it does 1d4 less damage on its weapon attacks, and also has disadvantage on strength checks and saving throws. Let's try that. Oh, I can't, for some reason I can't use extended spell, even though it's got a duration. Never mind. This might not work. There's only 50% chance, like flipping a coin. And they pass their saving throw. So one of the other new spells is Cloud of Daggers. This sets up a stationary area of effect where if any enemy walks inside it, they take 4d4 damage. So out in the open like this, it's not necessarily a good idea, but I just want to show it off. I quite like the animation actually. We've got some swirling daggers. It took 8 slashing damage, just maybe slightly bit below average, but you know, it's not so bad. And it requires concentration, but this cloud cannot move. It's stuck in place. So Gimblebok will almost certainly move out of it on his next turn. Now at the beginning of Gimblebok's turn, he took more damage. So this is going to be really useful. This is a bit like Moonbeam, except you can't move it and does a bit less damage, but there's no saving throw against it. Enemies just take that damage. Especially useful, I used it in one of my runs earlier, fighting against the skeletons inside the ruins here, where if you run into the little room and you can set this up, it's like the width of the corridor and the skeletons just run into it and keep taking damage. So positioning for this spell will be very important. If you put it in the wrong place, it'll be not very good. Enemies will avoid it, but if you put it in a place where enemies cannot avoid it, they will have to go through it and they will take damage. Alright, so I have rested before coming down into the ruins, and we've got all these enemies here, and I'm going to use Quicken Spell. So Quicken Spell, this applies to basically any spell. Let's just use Cloud of Daggers to try and hurt these two. Most of these enemies are ranged, so they won't walk through the Cloud of Daggers. Perhaps I can put it like this. So you'll notice that I used a bonus action, so I've still got an action free to cast another spell. If I really wanted to, I could cast Cloud of Daggers. Instead, I'm going to cast, just because I want to keep showing it off, Chromatic Orb. This time let's use, what haven't I used? I haven't used Cold. So I can target, I can almost target the ground, but the path is interrupted. Let's target Torga. And there we are. So I cast 2 spells in one turn. One of them got turned to a bonus action. One other thing I want to point out about Metamagic is that you can use it with scrolls. So I've just picked Twinned Spell there, and then I can use Guiding Bolt on Fank and Chock. Send out 2 Guiding Bolts. I just want to point out, hopefully it works, that we can still steal Volo's Ersatz. Come on. Yes, okay, good. On one of my sorcerers, on Tav here, Charisma at 17, an odd number, so he can use Volo's Ersatz. I always like to put it in the inventory just in case, probably don't need to. Double click it. Now Charisma is 18. There are other ways to get the eye, but I just wanted to point out that it is still possible to steal it at least. At level 4, we get 1 more sorcery point. We get to pick yet another cantrip, so now up to 5 just from being a sorcerer. So take whatever you want. We get to pick another level 2 spell. No, another spell can be level 1 or level 2. Maybe someone should have invisibility. And we can replace the spell if we want. Maybe I don't want Witch Bolt anymore. And maybe I want... Actually, Misty Step instead. Misty Step's always a useful spell to have. And then we get the same old ability score improvement or a feat. I just want to point out that this is the character that used Volo's Eye, and it doesn't actually appear in this screen here because that's at 18 currently, because I put the one into Charisma. So this character's stats are that at the moment. Thinking about feats and ability score improvements, obviously upping Charisma is probably the main aim, so your spells are stronger. I probably wouldn't pick Athlete or Defensive Duelist or Dual Wielder or Great Weapon Master. Maybe you'd want to pick up Lightly Armoured. Well, not on a sorcerer that's of the draconic bloodline, but maybe on a wild magic sorcerer, perhaps, especially if dexterity or strength were an odd number. We've now got 2 extra magic initiate choices in sorcerer, and they've finally added druid. You could pick up another couple of sorcerer cantrips if you wanted, and another level 1 sorcerer spell if you wanted. If you feel like you don't have enough spell slots, warlock works very well because these spells here use charisma as their casting modifier, and as a sorcerer you also use charisma as your casting modifier. Eldritch Blast seems like it'll be great. It's only a little bit better than Firebolt. Force damage is generally a bit better, but don't feel like this is the be-all and end-all of cantrips. Eldritch Blast is really good on the Warlock because they get the invocations. And then we get a choice of spell. I'd go with Hex if I was going to do this. Wizard, maybe if you wanted to have an extra Wizard spell or a couple of cantrips. Though, if you're going to do that, I'd probably just go with the Magic Initiate Sorcerer instead. Martial Adept I wouldn't do. Mobile increases your speed by 10 feet, and this mobile now works properly. If you make an attack against a creature, they cannot make opportunity attacks against you. If you've got like a melee sorcerer, this would be very useful. Shield Master I wouldn't do because sorcerers aren't proficient with shields. Skilled probably not. Tough maybe. Weapon Master, if you're trying to create some sort of melee sorcerer, yes, because sorcerers don't have proficiency in a lot of different weapons, so that could be useful. I'm going to try out Magic Initiate Warlock. Pick Minor Illusion, why not? Let's pick Eldritch Blast just for the sake of it, and I'm definitely going to pick Hex. So a few good choices for feats. The solid, reliable, although slightly boring, but definitely just one of the best choices is improving charisma up to the next even number. So I'm just going to show you what happens when we try and twin Hex. It's a bit strange, it actually opens up an area of effect, which isn't how the others work. So we have actually hexed both of them. Let's now try and twin a spell with an attack roll. Eldritch Blast would be a good choice. I think it might be ever so slightly nicer to use Chromatic Orb. I'm going to use Thunder. There's a bit more damage when it hits them. And you can see that we did get the extra necrotic damage on both of them, I think. Oh, I missed that other one. Fair enough. Hex is still bugged in that we can cast each of these variations of Hex once every long rest instead of just Hex once. So this is still a top tier choice for a feat for almost any class. I want to point out that High Ground gives us a +2 advantage. So in a sense, High Ground has been nerfed, but on the other hand, we can still gain advantage such as from hiding to give us advantage and +2 from High Ground. So that covers pretty much the basics and things you need to be thinking about when creating a sorcerer. Overall, they are going to be a strong class. Their main limitation is the number of sorcery points that they will get, and also the number of spells that they know. One of the most important things for your sorcerer is which spells you pick, and then which metamagics you think you will use with those particular spells. I'm not going to go over what am I going to do to these guys. Continue blasting away at them. So I will be having I can see I've already started a party here of sorcerers, which I'll be kind of starting over again with in a live stream. Let me know what you think of the sorcerer, whether you'll be using it. There are loads of other things that were introduced in patch 6. I showed you a few of them, but that's just because they happened to come up while making this video. Let me know what builds you're looking forward to using with the sorcerer also. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, please do consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.